When I was 14, my dad gave me my first real camera. We had just met a few months before, and I flew to New Orleans where he lived. This would be my first trip outside of Wisconsin, my first time away from the predictable environment which I'd grown up in. I took photos of everything. It was Mardi Gras, and I might as well have been in a foreign country. These were things I'd never been exposed to before. After returning home, I shared my photos, my stories, my experiences, and this is when it hit me. I want to do this for a living. It was 1989, and I joined the Air Force for their photojournalism program in hopes of traveling to far-off places, sharing stories like the 14-year-old me dreamed of. I distinctly remember seeing an issue of Time magazine on the table in front of me. The cover was a photo of a man wearing a white blood-stained shirt, trying to cover himself while men beat him with batons. This is where I was heading. I was deployed to Panama, Central America. My first Christmas away from home was spent listening to sounds of bombs being dropped over Panama City during Operation Just Cause.
And Carlos is going to tell us the latest. It's been reported that the U.S. troops have arrived in the vicinity in Panama City of the Cuban embassy.
I was to remain on base while the fighting started. Females were not yet approved for conflict zones. My job was to document those who were going back home, the ones who gave the ultimate sacrifice. Our bowling alley, where we had had a few pitchers of beer the week before, was now a makeshift morgue. I remember how they looked, young, peaceful, and incomplete. I never heard of PTSD, but it must have been the reason why I had a hard time rolling my film onto reels in the dark. Because the boys with missing parts, bullet holes, and serene faces were standing behind me as I hurried to turn the lights back on. Assignments that followed began to layer and thicken my skin. I made the leap from military to civilian with the United Nations. For 2 years, I traveled throughout the war-torn region, documenting humanitarian relief efforts into enclaves under siege. The stories were always similar, no matter what side of the front line we were on. Stories of rape, mass killing, unspeakable atrocities. There came a time when I no longer felt compassion. I was merely doing a job, just documenting. I had lost my 14-year-old enthusiasm, and that's when I knew it was time to leave. The return to the States was a shock to my system. The camaraderie is what I missed from the military. Fast forward 10 years, I lost my career and my identity. How would I reinvent myself at this age? What relevance do I have outside this profession I've worked for over 20 years? That familiar feeling of irrelevance and being distraught and withdrawn crept back in. A friend suggested, try yoga. This shifted my entire existence. The more I came to my mat, the lighter life became. In the midst of my greatest transition, I found peace with everything. Slowly, I settled in and discovered the underlying essence of it all, acceptance. I began to accept my situations just as they were, my experiences good and bad. Most of all, I learned how to recognize moments. Instead of capturing them on film and looking for the next one, I learned to savor them. As I deepened my practice while teaching at a yoga studio around the corner from my house, I was given the opportunity to buy into ownership. It seemed like a giant gift. A new passion, a new career. I've become a yoga teacher and a studio owner. Instead of sharing stories of war, I now share the knowledge of inner peace. Then came the true epiphany. I attended an iRest session with Warriors at Ease teacher Annie Ackerlin and learned about Warriors at Ease, and I knew instantly it was something I wanted to be a part of. Warriors at Ease interweaved the yoga world with the military world. It created a space where the two can meet on common ground. The training brought me back to my roots and back to that camaraderie I never again thought I would find. I use this in my current role as Deputy Director of the Veterans Alternative. A Green Beret and I started this center to provide our combat veterans a familiar environment as they transition back into the civilian world. We use these methods to activate their post-traumatic growth, replenish their camaraderie, and train their mind, body, and spirit. It's a melding of both worlds. Now when I see the serene, peaceful faces of our warriors as they lay on their yoga mats at the end of class, I think to myself, there can't be a more noble way to serve in this world.